You want to know the exact moment I realized I was being optimized like a piece of legacy software?
It wasn't at the dinner.
It was 3 years of small, quiet redirections. I'm Harry, 31 years old.
I've spent the last decade in the trenches of back-end development, grinding through 80-hour weeks in Palo Alto before moving east. I don't buy Ferraris.
I buy index funds. By the time I met Olivia, I had a portfolio that looked like a mountain range.
She was different, high energy, a senior account exec at a boutique PR firm in Manhattan, making about $75,000.
She was the face of us.
I was the founding for 3 years. We were the perfect Connecticut power couple.
She had the social grace I lacked, and I had the $180,000 salary that made her lifestyle look effortless. I paid for the weekend trips to the Hamptons, the $200 dinners, the spontaneous gifts. I told myself it was fine because we were building a kingdom. We talked about a house in Fairfield Place with a porch and enough room for a home office and a nursery. I saw a partner.
She saw a venture capitalist who didn't know he was being pitched.
I was so blinded by the we that I didn't see she was strictly focused on the me. When we finally found the one, a classic 1920 seconds Colonial in Westport, it felt like we'd struck gold. It needed work, sure, but the bones were solid, and the neighborhood was pure old money Connecticut. The price tag was $650,000.
For a software guy like me, I saw it as a logic problem to be solved. For Olivia, it was her grand stage. We sat down in our cramped apartment with a bottle of wine and a legal pad to hash out the numbers.
I was coming to the table with 80,000 savings I'd scraped together while living on ramen and coffee in my 20s. Olivia said her parents were gifting her $35,000, and she had another $10,000 in her savings.
Total down payment, 1 to 5. Oh, I did the math right there on the paper. $80K from me, $45,000 from her.
I looked at her and said, since I'm putting up roughly 65%, the deed should reflect that.
65 35th ownership until we're married and things level out. She didn't even blink.
She grabbed my hand, looked me in the eye, and whispered, Harry, you're our rock. Whatever is fair, I trust you. We signed the purchase agreement 48 hours later. I wired my $80,000 into the escrow account the very next morning. I thought I was securing our future.
In reality, I was just putting the finishing touches on a target on my back.
I didn't know that while I was checking the inspection reports, she was already meeting with a lawyer to make sure that 65% of mine would eventually become 50% of ours, and 100% none of my business. The setup was flawless.
Sunday dinner at her parents' estate in Greenwich, a place that smells like Jo Malone candles, and generational wealth that isn't actually theirs. Her father, Richard, a man who wears a sweater vest like it's a suit of armor, poured a 2018 Napa cap that probably cost more than my first car.
The vibe was celebratory, almost refined.
I thought we were there to toast to the closing date. Halfway through the sea base, the temperature in the room dropped 10 degrees.
Olivia didn't reach for my hand.
She reached for her glass.
She tapped it, clink, clink, a clink, that sharp metallic sound that stops all conversation. Harry, she started, her PR voice sliding on like a silk glove. I've been doing some deep soul searching about our future.
With the house coming through and the wedding around the corner, I want us to start on a foundation of absolute clarity. I've had my attorney draft a prenuptial agreement. I paused, fork midway to my mouth.
A prenup?
We'd never discussed one. Richard leaned back, swirled his wine, and gave me this patronizing man-to-man look. It's a total separation filing. Olivia continued, her eyes as cold as the marble countertops. What's mine stays mine. What's yours stays yours.
We keep our accounts separate, our taxes separate, and our debts separate. It's the only way for a modern, independent woman to feel secure. She said it with such a practiced, rehearsed smile.
She wasn't asking. She was notifying me. She wanted the $80,000 I'd already wired to buy the house, but she wanted a legal iron curtain drop the second the ink was dry on the marriage license. She was asking me to fund her independence with my life savings. I put my fork down. The sea base suddenly tasted like ash. Wait a minute, I said, trying to keep my voice as level as the lines of code. If everything is separate, how does that work with the house? I'm putting up 80. Oh, nearly double your contribution. Richard didn't miss a beat. He leaned forward, the candlelight reflecting in his glasses like a predatory cat.
Now, Harry, don't be emotional.
Think of it as a clean slate. Once you're married, the house becomes the marital home 50-50.
That's just standard domestic law.
But everything else Olivia's family trusts, her future inheritance, her earnings, that stays in her vault. It's about protecting her legacy. So, let me get this straight, I countered.
You want me to sink my liquid cash money I earned, not inherited, into a joint asset where I immediately lose 15% of my equity to her.
But in exchange, I get protected from her student loans, while she shields her family money from me. Where is my protection?
Olivia sighed. That performative "I'm dealing with a child" sigh she used when I didn't agree with her choice of curtains.
Harry, it's about independence. If heaven forbid we split, we just walk away with what we brought. Except the house, of course.
That's our nest.
It's only fair that we own it equally as a couple. It was a masterclass in gaslighting. They were framing a $40,000 wealth transfer from my pocket to hers as romantic equality, while building a legal fortress around every penny she had. They saw me as a high-yield savings account they could withdraw from, but never had to deposit into.
They weren't looking for a husband.
They were looking for a subsidized landlord. A strange thing happens when you spend your life as a developer. You learn to spot a bug in the logic long before the system crashes. For the last 3 weeks, Olivia had been glitching. The hushed phone calls that ended abruptly when I entered the kitchen, the way she stopped talking about our future and started using the word my gut wasn't just whispering. It was screaming. I looked across the table at Richard's smug satisfaction and Olivia's expectant smile. They thought they had me cornered.
"You're right, Olivia," I said, leaning back and pulling my phone from my pocket.
"Clarity is everything. And since you've been mulling this over for weeks while I was busy wiring $80,000 into a joint dream,
I decided to do some soul-searching of my own yesterday." I tapped the screen and slid the phone into the center of the table, right next to Richard's expensive wine.
It was a PDF confirmation from the escrow officer. "I called the title company yesterday morning," I said, my voice dropping an octave.
I informed them that since the final mortgage terms were unstable, I was withdrawing my name from the purchase agreement and reclaiming my funds. The $80,000 hit my private brokerage account 2 hours ago.
Since we're keeping everything separate, I figured I'd start with my liquidity. The color drained from Olivia's face so fast it was like watching a screen flicker to black. The Bank of Harry didn't just have a new policy, it was officially out of business. The silence in that room was heavy enough to crush a man, but I'd never felt lighter. Richard's glass stayed frozen halfway to his mouth, and Olivia.
She looked like she'd just seen her own ghost. "You did what?"
She whispered. The pure polish was gone. Her voice was thin, frantic. "I honored your request," I said, taking a slow sip of the Cabernet I was no longer expected to pay for. "Separate means separate, Olivia."
"You don't want my name on your future assets?"
"Fine.
Then my name doesn't belong on the mortgage application for a house you can't afford without me." The math was brutal and immediate.
On her $75,000 salary, a $650,000 mortgage wasn't just a stretch, it was a fantasy. She needed my $180,000 income to even get past the bank's automated filters. Without my 80 grand, the deal was dead on arrival. "Harry, the earnest money." Her mother, Diane, finally shrieked.
"The $10,000 deposit is in escrow.
"If you walk away, that money is gone." "Correction," I replied.
Olivia's $10,000 is gone. Since I never signed the final release of contingency due to these new terms, my portion is safe."
"But Olivia..."
"She has exactly 72 hours to come up with the remaining $500,000 or she loses her deposit and the house." Richard exploded.
He started shouting about gentlemen's agreements and moral obligations. It was fascinating to watch.
5 minutes ago, they were cold-blooded contract negotiators. Now, they were victims of my cruelty. Olivia started to sob, the kind of loud, performative crying meant to make me feel like a monster. But all I saw was a person who was mourning a paycheck, not a partner. The guilt almost got to me that night.
I'm a fixer by nature, it's what I do for a living, and seeing Olivia shattered made me wonder if I'd gone too far. But then, the universe decided to hand me the logs of the real conversation happening behind my back. 2 days later, I met up with Sarah, a mutual friend who had been part of Olivia's inner circle since college.
She looked at me with this mix of pity and hesitation before sliding her phone across the table.
"Harry, you need to see the group chat. I can't watch you beat yourself up over this." There it was.
Text after text from the week leading up to the dinner.
Olivia wasn't nervous about the prenup. She was gloating. He's so predictable, she wrote.
He'll pay for the renovation, cover the mortgage spread, and the best part, I've got Richard drafting a way to make sure I'm untouchable if I want out in 5 years.
He's basically a high-yield bank with a proposal. One of her friends replied, "Isn't that a bit cold?"
Olivia's response burned into my retinas. It's called an exit strategy. Why use my family's money when I can use his? He's got plenty. Seeing it in black and white changed everything.
The 3 years of us wasn't a relationship.
It was a long-con performance.
I wasn't her fiancé. I was her venture capital.
Every I love you was just a maintenance fee to keep the investor happy.
At that moment, the last bit of grief for our relationship died.
You don't mourn a transaction that failed.
You just close the account. When a PR professional loses her narrative, she doesn't go quiet, she goes to war.
Within 48 hours, my LinkedIn was being flagged, and my Instagram DMs were a toxic waste dump of Olivia's book club friends calling me a financial abuser. She went public with a post that was a masterpiece of victim branding. Devastated, my dream home and my future taken away by a man who uses his wealth as a weapon of control. She even had the nerve to have a bottom-tier lawyer send me a letter threatening to sue for breach of promise and detrimental reliance. They claimed I owed her the $80,000 for the emotional distress of the failed house closing. I was sitting in my apartment, staring at the legal threat when my MOM called. She's a retired family court judge from New York, the kind of woman who has seen every trick in the book twice. I told her the whole story, waiting for her to tell me I was being too harsh. She laughed.
It wasn't a sympathetic chuckle. It was the sharp, cold laugh of a woman who had presided over 1,000 divorces. "Harry, listen to me," she said.
In my courtroom, I've seen men bled dry by separate but equal traps like this.
She didn't want a husband, honey. She wanted a sponsor.
A breach of promise suit.
In this century,
any judge with a pulse will throw that out before lunch.
She's not suing you because you broke her heart.
She's suing you because you broke her business plan. Let her scream on Instagram.
The law doesn't care about her aesthetic. It cares about the fact that she tried to bait and switch a contract. Hold the line. That was the reality check I needed.
I realized that if the roles were reversed, if I had lost my job and couldn't pay, she would have invoked that separate finances clause faster than a server crash. I stopped replying.
I let the silence be my lawyer. 3 days of radio silence usually fixes a bug. But Olivia wasn't accepting the shutdown.
I was in my home office when the intercom buzzed. I checked the camera.
It was Olivia, flanked by her parents and strangely a woman carrying a leather portfolio. My realtor, Sarah. I opened the door, and before I could speak, Olivia brushed past me like she still owned the place.
"Harry, we've had a stressful week, but we're moving forward," she said, her voice chirpy, almost manic.
She started spreading flyers across my dining table. Sarah found some starter homes in Norwalk.
$450,000, much more manageable. You put in 30 grand, I'll do 20, and we'll just push the wedding back to October.
Fresh start. I looked at Sarah, who looked like she wanted to evaporate into the floorboards. Then I looked at Olivia. She was acting as if the Greenwich ambush, the group chat, and the legal threats were just glitches we'd patched. "Olivia, stop," I said.
The room went quiet.
"There is no we. There is no October. The contract is terminated. Don't be dramatic, Harry." Richard chimed in from the doorway, adjusting his vest. "We're here to resolve this like adults.
We're willing to let the prenup be flexible. It's not about the prenup anymore, Richard," I said, walking to the door and holding it open.
"It's about the fact that I've seen the source code. You didn't come here to save a relationship.
You came here because the Bank of Harry is the only way she stays in this zip code.
You're trespassing. All of you." Olivia's face twisted, the mask finally shattered for good. She lunged toward me, screaming that I had ruined her life. I didn't raise my voice. I just pulled out my phone and showed her the screen. I was already on the line with building security. "You have 60 seconds to leave before the Norwalk police finish what I started," I told her. As they were escorted out, shouting about my cold heart, I handed the security guard a PI-written trespass notice. I wasn't just closing a tab. I was wiping the hard drive. They say karma is a mirror, and for Olivia, the reflection was brutal.
Because she had bragged so loudly about her independence.
She forgot that the law takes you at your word since the house deal collapsed. That $35,000 gift from her parents was no longer a down payment. It was just an undocumented transfer of wealth. Richard, the master strategist, ran right into an iOS buzzkill. without a property closing to shield it. They got hit with gift tax implications. And since Olivia had already spent part of it on wedding non-refundables,
she ended up owing thousands in back taxes she didn't have. Her exit strategy cost her family nearly $45,000 in losses and fees, and they have exactly 0 square feet of real estate to show for it. Then came the ring. She tried to keep the 2.5-carat diamond as a consolation prize for her trauma when my lawyer reminded her that in the state of Connecticut,
an engagement ring is a conditional gift, no wedding. No ring. She finally sent it back.
But I'm a DV. I verify everything.
I took it to my jeweler, and sure enough, the coward had swapped the center stone for a high-end cubic zirconia. I didn't even call her.
I just sent a draft of the grand larceny police report to Richard. The real diamond was back on my desk in 4 hours. Now, I'm 31, and my life is surprisingly quiet. I invested that 80 grand into a distressed tech fund during the dip, and it's already up 12%.
I'm not dating yet.
I'm recalibrating. People ask me if I regret being cold. I tell them no. I was ready to be a husband, a father, and a teammate. I was ready to build a life where 1 + 1 = 3. But Olivia did the math differently. She wanted 1 + 1 to equal me. I learned the hard way that at 31, your greatest asset isn't your salary or your home, it's your boundaries. I'm no longer a bank with a proposal. I'm just a man looking for a partner who wants my heart, not my spreadsheet.
And honestly, the ROI on my peace of mind is the best investment I've ever made. Thanks for watching. Don't forget to subscribe and hit the like button. What do you think about this story? Let me know in the comments.